Down there, you can see those grey buildings. Late 12th, 13th and 14th century. Before that, the monastery consisted of wooden buildings, which have not lasted. Wood doesn't last in Ireland, but this anyway. So it's the wood has always been grey, but the stone buildings which commenced the construction around the starting of now through the woods. And we're going to walk down those steps across that bridge that you see over there. And somebody said they'd like to see the running water with the rocks and everything else. You'll see all of that when you're crossing over that bridge. But could I ask you, when you're here and when the phone, please remember to look in all directions, because sometimes that's not the only view of front. Nice things to the left and the right. There's a nice view from that bridge, looking back at the monastery side. Silhouette. We're going to go for a walk now in this direction here.
Qué bajo de frío. Sigo la montaña. Glendalough. Wicklow trains. Aquí se juntan dos carros.
Part of Christian life in Europe in the early Christian days. Christians went on holy journeys, pilgrimages to Rome. They went to Jerusalem. They went to other holy cities throughout Europe. They went along the Camino to Santiago de Compostela. Well, this was the Irish Camino. This was the Irish road to Glendalough. The pilgrims came here from the west, from the east, and they crossed over the stream. It was a stone bridge, and it stood here for over 1,000 years, until December of 2010. In December of 2010, there was an unusual happening here in Ireland. Very unusual. We had 5 days of non-stop snow. It didn't stop snowing here in the mountains for 5 days. And then what's not unusual, we had a warm front moved across the country. And all that snow melted. All of that water came crashing down the valley. The bridge was washed away. So 1,000 years of history disappeared in one night. Now the good news is they've collected all of the stones. The good news is they're going to rebuild the bridge. But unfortunately, that 20th century animal has got involved, health and safety. Health and safety want railings and barriers and notices and steel reinforcements. We want the bridge built the way the monks built it. They built it as strong as they could, and it only lasted for 1,000 years. In the same way as the Romans built roads and bridges across Europe 2,000 years ago, we're still using them today. Why? Because they built them as strong as they could. It was all they knew. But in the meantime, we have a temporary wooden bridge. And because it's temporary, it doesn't need health and safety improvement. Now, I don't know why they can't build a temporary stone bridge and be done with it, but that's far too simple for the bureaucrats. So we're going to cross over this bridge in a few minutes into the ruins of the monastery. The buildings you see there date construction-wise from the late 12th to 13th and 14th century. Destruction all happened in the early 17th century, in the 1640s, the time of Oliver Cromwell. And we talk about it when we go across there. But before that, one of the legends of Glendalough concerns the stone that's in front of me here. This stone is known as the Deer Stone. And the legend is that when this was a monastery, one of the monks was in the woods one day minding his animals, when he found a baby under a tree, a foundling, a little abandoned baby boy. The monk took the baby up, brought the baby down into the monastery, and went into the head monk, the abbot, and said to the abbot, "Look what I found in the woods." And the abbot said, "Where are you going with that? How are we going to feed a baby? We're all men, we don't have any women, we don't have any wet nurses, we don't have any milk." But the monk said to the abbot, "Don't worry, brother abbot, I know that God will provide." And legend tells us that God did provide. Because every day a female deer came down from the woods. She shed her milk into that stone. They fed the milk to the baby. And the the baby grew up to become St. Lawrence O'Toole, the patron saint of the city of Dublin. Now where we are here in County Wicklow, this is O'Toole country. The O'Toole clan came from here. So Lawrence O'Toole was the abbot here at one time. He was also the Bishop of Dublin. But I much prefer that story of the baby, the monk and the deer, to the one of the archaeologists who, when you ask them what was this used for, they say they don't know. It might have been used to grind corn. How might have been used? I much prefer the other story, don't you? But this stone is a little bit like the Trevi Fountains. You know the Trevi Fountains in Rome? You're invited to chuck some money in and you're guaranteed you're going to come back to Rome. Well, this is the same, except we don't look for money. We're not that crass. We just ask you to do something. That there is a seat carved into the rock. You must sit there with your feet down there. There are 5 holes here with the 5 fingers that are not here. You sit there, put your fingers in here on the left hand, put your right hand into the water. If you do that without dislocating your neck and damaging your shoulders, you're guaranteed you'll come back to Glendalough. You're laughing. Don't laugh, it does work. I did it 34 years ago and I'm back here twice a week. I can guarantee it definitely does work. So do you want to follow me across and we talk some more? Okay. First building we're going to talk about is this one that we're inside here at the moment. This is the ruins of St. Kieran's Church, one of the 5 churches here at Glendalough. This was the only church destroyed by Propia. Not alone did he take the roof off it, he destroyed the actual walls as well. But it gives us a chance to look at a typical layout of a church built in the Celtic period. The Celts always oriented their churches from the west to the east. Congregations came in through a doorway on the western side. Everybody faced east as they worshipped. Even up here in the chancel area, the high altar area, the monks and priests saying their masses also faced towards the east. Now we know why Muslim people face east when saying their prayers. They're looking towards Mecca, the holy city of the Muslim faith. Maybe these Christians were looking towards Rome or Jerusalem, roughly in the right direction, the big important cities of the Christian faith. But it's far more subtle than that. You must remember that these Christian missionaries came here in the 5th century. They were selling a religion to a people who had a very good religion after all. The Celts worshipped their principal god was the sun. And the Druids always worshipped at dawn, facing east as the sun rose. So when the Christian missionaries came along, why change things? They had everybody looking towards the east in the traditional way as they said the Mass of Dawn, the principal Mass of the day. And all of the churches here in Glendalough are all oriented west to east in that tradition. In fact, all churches built in Ireland before the Reformation, before the 16th century, were all oriented west to east. In fact, a lot of churches are still built that way because that's the tradition. So as I said, all of the churches here are oriented west to east. If you visited the cathedrals in Dublin, St. Patrick's Cathedral and Christchurch Cathedral, also west to east, as indeed is the Black Abbey very later on today in Kilkenny. The church there is west to east as well, still surviving to this day. So it's tradition. The second church we're going to talk about is that one over there, known as St. Kevin's Church. Now St. Kevin's Church is the only church in Glendalough to have retained its roof after the passage of Cromwell through here. It's retained its roof because it was still in use as a place of worship by the Anglican community in Ireland. The Reformation happened here in Ireland. The established religion, the
Pues aquí estamos viendo para ver Glendalough. Con tanta lluvia se entiende. Mira, pues esto no está bien. Por acá. Por aquí las corrientes que vienen de la montaña. Esta agua está ahí.
rock falls and alluvial deposits and landslides, and now we have 2 lakes because the area in between the 2 lakes has been filled up by rock falls. So we have the upper lake, which is 1.5 kilometres further up the valley, and we have the lower lake here, which is called the lower lake of Glendalough. Now, typical glacial. People say it reminds them of the fjords of Norway. And of course they're glacial also, carved out by glaciers, vertical walls. And the walls go down under the water. The water at its deepest point is 21 metres. So there's a lot of water stacked up behind that. And it's never very warm. The water in Glendalough lakes never gets above 11 degrees because most of it is snow melt. Snow that fell earlier on in the winter or last winter in the ground, gradually seeping out of it, never warms up. The two lakes are in almost permanent shade. Even in the summer, the hills are so high around it that the sun doesn't really shine very much on the lakes. Hence, the temperature remains very cold. The lake is stocked by coarse fish and some brown trout. Brown trout being the native fish to this part of the world here. They tolerate cold temperatures, or cold temperature fish. The houses you see along the road on the far side, they're not the houses, homes of millionaires who have bought a nice house with a nice view out in front of them. These are family homes. The same family's been living in them for generations. Because the policy of the government and of the local authority here in Wicklow is that when a house comes up for sale in Glendalough, the government buy it and demolish it. You can inherit it, you can pass it on from father to son, mother to daughter, whatever, but don't try to sell it. Otherwise, it gets knocked down. So that's what's happening here. Gradually, the houses are being demolished along the valley. They're returning it back to the way nature intended it. On this side of the valley, we're in the Glendalough Woods Nature Reserve. Everything that happens here is totally natural. A tree grows here not because anybody planted them, that's where a seed fell and that's where the tree grew. And as you can see, when a tree falls over, they leave it there because they are just as important for the environment as dead trees. Dead trees support 3 times the amount of life in a live tree does. So the trees are growing here. You see the brown vegetation all around it. Those are last year's ferns. Now ferns are dinosaur food. Fossils of ferns have been found fossilized with the dinosaurs from 200 million years ago. And those ferns that were found with the fossils, with the dinosaurs, they're almost the same as the ferns that can be found in the world today. Little or no evolution has taken place. Ferns are the oldest plants known to botanists. So the trees and the ferns are growing here, the grasses. But the most common plant of all, and you probably walk by it and didn't even see it, is the moss. The moss is everywhere. On the ground, on the rocks, on the trees, everywhere you look, there is moss. It's sphagnum moss. It's a very invasive moss, a very absorbent moss. It holds 80 times its own weight in water. It's 3 times more absorbent than a sponge. And sphagnum moss, together with the vegetation here, forms in its growth over the centuries what we call a bog in peatland, other parts of the world. The moss grows and the plants grow and then it dies, but absorbs moisture. And then it rots, and then it grows, dies and rots, and grows, dies and rots. You have that cycle continue year upon year, building up layer upon layer of a biomass material that we call bogs in Ireland. They're called peatland in other parts of the world. So what's happening here, I'll talk about it a little bit later on the coach. So what's happening here is nature is gradually repairing the damage caused by the glaciers. Sorry, repairing the damage caused by the glaciers all those years ago. So come back in a couple of million years, you never know what you might see here. It might be a verdant green. The trees that you see, well, that's a stand of Scots pine there. Scots pine is native to Ireland as well as Scotland. They gave it the name, but it's nonetheless an Irish tree. We also have lots of oak trees here. Now, they're not the spreading oak trees that you associate with good land down the valleys. These are oak that have adapted to grow on the poorer soil up here on the high ground. And also there's lots of silver birch and the rowan tree, or the mountain ash as we call it here in Ireland. So those are the trees here. Wildlife in Ireland, we don't have any dangerous wildlife in Ireland. We have no poisonous spiders, no scorpions, no snakes in Ireland. You may have noticed, or not, if you saw a statue or a picture of St. Patrick, there's always snakes at his feet. The legend is that St. Patrick banished all the snakes. We're going to have to get him back to get rid of the government. We wouldn't fall into the body that much ago. So we don't know why they've done snakes here. They have them in England, which is very similar climate to ours, but we don't have them over here. The only large wildlife we have in Ireland are deer. Now we've the 2 types of deer here. The native Irish type, the red deer. The red deer can still be found in the southwest of Ireland down in County Kerry, or indeed up in the northwest in Donegal. Up here on the east coast of Ireland, we have the fallow deer, or the spotted deer. And they were introduced by the Normans when they invaded us in the 12th century. Those Normans liked to hunt, and they didn't like hunting the red deer. It was too difficult to capture them. So they introduced these smaller fallow deer or spotted deer. So we have these fallow deer on the east coast of Ireland. Rarely see them here in Glendalough. They are here all right, because once people start walking up and down that pathway, the deer disappear up into the high ground. But if you're interested in seeing a herd of deer, fallow deer, it's very possible to do so, because a 20-minute walk from O'Connell Bridge will take you to the Phoenix Park, an urban park to the west of the city of Dublin, And in that park, there's a herd of deer there for everyone to see. They're almost tame, not quite, but they're almost tame. But it's a herd of deer nonetheless within the city confines of Dublin. Now that's the end of our little walk and our talk through the...
No, pues aquí está este lago que se ha formado pues, con la lluvia. Bueno, pues este es el interior del monasterio, lo que podemos ver. Este es de los pocos monasterios que se salvó, porque lo que hacían era cuando Enrique VIII preparó su iglesia, pues era quitar el techo y ya después la naturaleza con tanta lluvia hacía el resto. Y tenemos el Camposanto. Esta tumba es de 1927. Y aquí en esta parte se ve cómo sigue funcionando como cementerio, porque se ve que hay mausoleos más modernos. Esta es la casa del cura. Y el jefe del monasterio. Esto que es más grande, esto lo llaman la catedral, porque era la iglesia más grande que había en Glendalough. Pero pues como le quitaron el tejo, pues ya se ha ido estropeando. Pues el cementerio se quejó. Aquí todavía siguen trayendo flores. Bueno, pues esto es de Glendalough, o sea, la torre redonda. Con un peculiaridad que la puerta estaba ahí un poco alta, se supone que tenía una escalera que subían para arriba para que los enemigos lo tuviesen fácil para entrar. Aquí vemos más tumbas y al fondo la catedral. Qué simpático, viendo fotos. Se supone que la plantita te protege de la lluvia, pero nada todo tan claro.
For the making of the film Braveheart. When filming was finished, the production company...
Aquí tenemos una vista fantástica de la nieve.
The only resemblance between this place and Hollywood in California is that sign. This is tiny. 4 buildings of any note here. You've St. Kevin's Anglican Church just behind us, St. Kevin's Roman Catholic Church there, St. Kevin's Health Centre here, and St. Kevin's School. So there you are. Children are all back at school now. I don't like the pupils. The parents are suck. She says, I told her, you have to go, Laura, because you're the principal. they sent the Cistercian monks here to Ireland to reform that Celtic church. They came to the Cistercian monastery of Baltinglass.
Bueno, castillo de Kilkenny. Pues esta es la librería del castillo de Kilkenny. La biblioteca, perdón. Sin la mala traducción. Listo para la guerra.
So no video, please.
Bueno, pues esto es el exterior del castillo de Kilkenny. Aquí el jardín del castillo.
Except for the arrow slits you see there. Those arrow slits are there for archers to shoot arrows out through. And the niche in the wall, if you get into the audiovisual display which is in there in that room, you can see the niche in the wall where those archers would have stood. And they are tall enough to carry the longest longbow that they ever used around above the town. This was a dry moat. It wasn't the wet moat that you know. Around the front, you have a moat around it and a drawbridge over the front. When you don't know your drawbridge in French today is a wardrobe where you keep your clothing. But in Old French, garderobe was part of what they call les cabinets. The cabinets were the smallest rooms in the castle. The rooms where you did your... There's big emphasis here on French. We have the garderobe, we have the sally port, we have the punch-a-food. You must remember that these were Normans who founded this city. These Normans, they were Normans first and French second. They were never English, they were never Irish. They regarded themselves as being Normans and French. And long after London and Dublin started using the new English language, which evolved in the 1400s and 1500s, Kilkenny persisted in the use of the French language up until the end of the 1600s. All of the records of the city were kept in French up until the end of the 1600s. Things changed in the 1600s, we talk about it a little bit later on. So now we're going to walk down along this parade ground, along the high street to a building known as the Col. That's where that word pole comes from, pole in the cap. And cell, that's the only important in the hall, different from the cell, that's hall. Kilkenny was a city surrounded by a wall, and there were gates in the wall. When you came through the gate, you paid a toll or a tax, and when you left, you paid a toll or a tax. You brought goods in for sale, you paid it. And they decided who lived where, what business was done out there and when. It was all at the discretion. This is where they came. This is where the ale houses were. This is where the gambling dens were. The casinos were here. Go on, this is where the girls were. Come on, let's tell the truth. This was the red light district of Kilkenny. 13th, 14th and 15th century. If you were a respectable citizen, you would not want to be seen down here after 9 o'clock at night. Well, roll the clock on up to today. This is where the young people of Kilkenny come at night, because this is where the fun is. This is where the ale houses were. This is where the coffee shops are. This is where the music is. This is where the crack is. You've come across that Irish word crack, have you? It's spelled C-R-A-I-C. It's not mind-altering chemical or anything like that. Crack, it's mind-altering, it's fun. The Irish word for fun. This is where the fun is. Big young population here in Kilkenny, outreach campuses from Dublin University and Cork University located here, and they come in here after 9 o'clock every night. They'll say that if you came down here after 9 o'clock at night and you held up your mobile phone, you don't even plug it into charge. It just charges itself with so much atmosphere, so much energy in the air. Testosterone on it. Well, let's walk along testosterone on it. I want to hear the story of a lady called Dame Alice Kilkenny. Now, Alice lived here in the year 1324. I know that's a long time ago, but this is a good story with an important lesson for all of us. The girls like this story. The boys don't like it so much. You'll find out why in a minute. Come on. And it was the home of a lady called Dame Alice Kilkenny. Alice, as I said, lived here in the year 1324. A wealthy lady, business lady, unusual for those times. Women didn't go into business, but Alice did. So she wasn't short of a few bob or a few dollars or a few yens or whatever it might be. She was wealthy. But then Alice had a second string to her bow. Alice was part of what they called in those days a money-lending family. Today, we call them bankers, loan sharks. I prefer loan shark. She loaned out money. People owed her money. She could call in favours. But Alice had a third string to her bow. Alice was also made a lot of money through marriage. Alice was married 4 times. Each time a little better than the last time, thank you very much. But she was dreadfully unlucky because her husbands kept dying on her. When husband number 4 came back from his honeymoon, he'd been married before, his family noticed that he looked poorly. His hair had started to fall out and his eyes had sunk into his head. His cheeks were hollow, his lips were thin, his nails were a funny colour. We call that arsenic poisoning today. His family didn't understand arsenic poisoning. Maybe Alice did. I'm not accusing her of anything. But his family went to the bishop. Now, pre-Reformation Europe, there was no separation between church and state. All the same. They went to the bishop and they complained that Alice must be practicing witchcraft. How else could her husbands keep dying? And the bishop agreed. Alice was arrested, put in prison in the castle to await trial for being a witch. But it didn't happen because she had influence. She called in some favours. She got out and she used her influence to have the bishop arrested and he was put in the castle. Now the cat and mouse game went on for a little while, but in the heat of the hunt, pre-Reformation Europe and pre-Reformation England and Ireland, there was going to be one winner only, and that was the church, because after all, the bishop, he knew the archbishop. The archbishop knew the cardinal knew the pope, and the pope was number 2, God was number 1. The bishop won out. So Alice was put on trial for being a witch. But they needed evidence. Now, they didn't have CSI Miami in those days. They didn't have forensics or detectives or Sherlock Holmes or anything like that. But there's something even better. Torture. Because arrested with Alice was her son William. She had just the one son and 4 of her servants. And the 4 servants were tortured over a period of 5 days. Eventually, on the 5th day, her personal maid, her name was Petronella. She was 17 years of age and she came from Scotland. Petronella cracked and told them what they wanted to hear. She told them that she'd witnessed Alice making love to the devil and the devil giving her the powers of witchcraft. They had her, an eyewitness. What more could you want? But not alone did they have her for being a witch. Here was Alice, a Christian, making love to the devil. That was heresy. So she was put on trial for being a heretic and for being a witch. She was found guilty and sentenced to the only sentence there was for those sort of people in those days, death by burning. But it didn't happen because she knew people. She called in some favours. She escaped. She went off to live in London. She might still be there for all we know, leaving her son William and the 4 servants. Now William, a wealthy young man, part of a banking family, he went to the bishop and he said, "My lord, I'm very sorry for what my mother did and it was wrong, but don't you need a new roof on your cathedral?" The bishop said, "I do," and William says, "Well, I'll pay for that." And the bishop said, "William, good boy, you can go now," leaving the 4 servants. Now 3 servants knew nothing. They hadn't confessed. They were innocent. They were let go. But Petronella, because she had to be tortured before she told the truth, was deemed to be a hostile, reluctant witness. They needed a victim and they got their victim. Petronella was burned at the stake in August 1324 on Gallows Hill outside Kilkenny. Now that's a fancy story for a wet Friday afternoon in Kilkenny. Yes it is, but it's a true story. Because the record of every trial that took place in Europe under the auspices of the Inquisition and the witch hunt trials, they're all kept in the archives of the Vatican City in Rome. There is only one record in those archives of somebody having been convicted of being both a witch and a heretic. Alice from Kilkenny. There's only one record in those archives of somebody having been convicted and never punished. Alice from Kilkenny. That was in 1324. And here we are today in 2017. And nothing has changed. It's still the same. The rich, and the powerful, and the well-connected, they use their wealth and their connections to escape justice, dodge their taxes, hire lawyers, hire accountants. Whereas you and I, we're the Petronellas of this world. We pay the price for all those people. Petronella paid the price for the banker way back in 1324, and the Irish people are paying the price for the bankers in 2017. Nothing changes. Now I'd like to meet up with Alice sometime because we're only hearing one side of the story, we're not hearing her side. I'd say that'd be a very interesting story. Might look her up when I go to London next. Have lunch with her. But not if she cooked it. No way, I'm not going to take chances. And I certainly don't want to marry the lady, so... Story of Alice Kittler. And we're going to walk a bit further down here to hear about the Grass family and the Roth family too. The Butlers had a castle, he wanted a castle, so he did himself. But unlike the Butlers, he didn't have a limitless funds. He ran out of money. But before he went under, he had a brainwave. He knew the people steered the ground as used on a daily basis when the fund was in session. And those three doors are very often open during the summer months when it's quite warm here. And you might see, if you're lucky or unlucky, as the case may be, the judge coming out with his whip. It's a way of looking up and down the street, seeing who was coming and going without getting your hair wet and your shoes dirty, but that's about all they're good for. Now after a while, Mr. Roth decided that his business was so successful that he built himself a second house on the property known as the family home. He moved his wife and his two children. The administration. Keep the Irish out. Because where we are here, we are inside the walls. This is High Town or English. And out there was Irish Town where the Irish lived. And the Irish weren't allowed in here. They had to have written permission. In the same way as you need a passport to enter another country, the Irish people had to produce an invitation to visit the city, which had to be produced and checked, and there's passport control in there, if you want to call it, inside that courtyard there, the original medieval guardhouse. Now the gate or a friar, a monk, because of the, in English it became known as Blackfriars Gate, because of the they're the followers of St. Dominic, and there's a statue of St. Martin and St. Dominic on the corner there, as the black tabard over it. The correct name for the abbey is the Abbey of the Most Holy Trinity. It's dedicated to the Trinity, and it was built and paid for by a man called Earl William Marshall the Younger in the year 1225. Now you may remember the story of Isabel, the young girl being married on her 16th birthday to Guillaume le Maréchal. Well, this was her son, so we're going back to the foundation of the city of Kilkenny, way back to 1225. And this abbey or monastery was built inexplicably. We don't know why it was built outside the walls. Because those Normans weren't interested in doing anything for the Irish. Anything they did was for themselves within the enclave of the city of Kilkenny. But this was built outside the walls, out here in Irish Town. And because it was the only solid building in Irish Town, it became the favourite place of worship for the Irish people. They worshipped here from the foundation of the monastery in 1225 from derelict. They were too valuable. So the buildings were sold off and used for various different purposes. Part of the abbey was used as a barracks for soldiers, as a courthouse. With a hammer and a chisel, banging away. Who could afford a mason for 6 months these days? No, you couldn't. And in those days, obviously only the wealthy could do that. And obviously the little children of the wealthy died also, as you can see from the far end there. Children's coffins down the far end. This one here is 2 metres long. Now, medieval men and women were not 2 metres. They weren't as tall as we are. But these were knights clad in armour, mounted on they had their helmets, they had their suits of armour, and all of that had to go inside. The ladies would have had their bonnets and their petticoats. They all had to go inside the coffin as well too. So that's why they're larger than life coffins from that medieval time. 3 coffins down from me there, the one with the carvings on the side of it, you can see the centrepiece, the centre carving, the shamrock, the clover type plant that I mentioned earlier, it's a symbol of Ireland. So it's not an invention of the 20th century marketeers to produce an emblem for Ireland. It was used way back in the 13th century when these were carved. So it's a very old symbol indeed. In fact, it's an old Celtic symbol. It predates even Christianity, the shamrock. And the final thing to mention is that up there on the hill, we have St. Mary's Roman Catholic Cathedral. Now it was built between the years 1828 and 1847. And when you consider that this was 1225, 600 years earlier, we don't include that on the medieval tour because it's far too young. This is the medieval tour, all right? But you can go and visit it if you want because the way back up. Yeah, exactly the same way as Martin. He just collapsed it.
Given the fact that some of our other policies that haven't left her at this stage,
Yeah.
it's not likely to happen. It's just not likely.
No, it's a dead duck now at this stage.
Now, all it was just have an election.
Yeah.
Might have roughly the same result.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever chance to have with Robinson there, you know, I mean, she is such a
She's
a large, big constituency. Yeah, well, yeah, that's what they mind. When they want it. You know,
Esta es la Catedral de Cristo. Eso es de Lluvia. Y eso es un bonito edificio con su corona.